Some people accept the world exactly as it's presented to them. And then there are others. They pause. They tilt their head. They ask a question that makes the room uncomfortable. Not because they want attention, not because they want to argue, but because something doesn't add up. These are the people who question everything, and psychology tells us something fascinating about them. They're often misunderstood, sometimes labeled difficult, often told they're overthinking. But beneath that surface lies a very specific kind of mind, one that sees patterns others miss, detects lies faster, and refuses to let reality be spoon-fed. Today, we're diving deep into the psychology of people who question everything, what drives them, why they struggle, and why the world secretly depends on them. Most people live by an invisible rule. If everyone agrees, it must be true. Questioners don't. When they hear a claim, their brain doesn't respond with agreement. It responds with a pause. Not rejection, suspension. Psychologists call this epistemic vigilance. It's the brain's natural defense system against false information. For most people, this system is relaxed. For chronic questioners, it's always on. They don't ask, is this popular? They ask, is this accurate? This is why they're often accused of being negative, skeptical, or distrustful. But here's the twist. They're not distrustful of people. They're distrustful of unexamined ideas. If you talk to people who question everything, many say the same thing. I always felt a little out of place. As children, they asked questions that didn't have easy answers. Why do we do it this way? Who decided that? What if everyone's wrong? Instead of praise, they often receive discomfort. Don't argue. That's just how it is. Stop asking so many questions. Psychologically, this creates an early split. Conform or stay curious. Belong or stay honest. Many questioners learn something early on. Truth sometimes costs social comfort, and that lesson stays with them for life. Neurologically, people who question everything show stronger activity in 3 areas: prefrontal cortex, logic, analysis, long-term thinking; anterior cingulate cortex, conflict detection; default mode network, deep reflection and internal dialogue. Translation: their brains are built to notice inconsistencies. When something doesn't align, a contradiction in a story, a gap in logic, a mismatch between words and actions, their brain lights up. They feel it before they can explain it. This is why questioners often say, "Something feels off," and they're usually right. Because questioning disrupts comfort, questioners are often called difficult, arrogant, pessimistic, contrarian. But psychology reveals something important. True questioners aren't trying to win, they're trying to understand. They don't enjoy conflict, they enjoy clarity. The problem? Clarity threatens fragile beliefs. So instead of examining the idea, people attack the person. This is known as defensive attribution, protecting your worldview by discrediting the challenger. Not all skepticism is the same. Cynicism says, everything is fake. Questioning says, show me the evidence. Cynics close doors, questioners open them. Cynics stop thinking, questioners never stop. This is why true questioners are often exhausted. Their mind doesn't switch off easily. They don't just consume information, they interrogate it. Authority relies on one thing: acceptance without resistance. Questioners struggle with this, not because they're rebellious, but because authority rarely explains why. When rules lack logic, questioners feel psychological friction. They're not defiant, they're internally allergic to nonsense. This makes them incredible innovators and terrible blind followers. Here's the part no one talks about. Questioners are often lonely, not socially, intellectually. They see problems others ignore. They notice manipulation others excuse. They spot long-term consequences others dismiss. But speaking up often leads to silence, or tension, or labels. So many questioners learn to stay quiet, and that silence becomes heavy. People who question everything are rarely satisfied with surface-level explanations. They're drawn to psychology, why people do what they do, philosophy, what's actually true, systems thinking, how everything connects. They don't want answers, they want frameworks, something that explains not just what happens, but why it keeps happening. Questioning everything has a cost. Decision fatigue, mental loops, second-guessing. While others move quickly, questioners hesitate, not because they're weak, but because they see too many variables. Their strength becomes their struggle. Questioning everything isn't just intelligence, it's an emotional weight. When your mind sees beneath the surface, you don't just see truth, you see complexity. You notice mixed motives, hidden intentions, long-term consequences others don't think about. While others feel certainty, questioners feel responsibility. Once you see a flaw, you can't unsee it, and that constant awareness can be exhausting.
People who question everything don't listen only to words. They listen to tone, timing, body language, emotional gaps. When someone says, "I'm fine," but isn't, they feel it immediately. So they ask, "Are you really okay? What's actually going on?" To some people, this feels uncomfortable, but it's not suspicion, it's attunement. Unfortunately, honesty often scares people. So questioners are told, "You think too much, just let it go." But for them, letting it go feels like lying to themselves.
One of the deepest struggles for questioners is this choice: belong or be honest. Belonging often requires agreement. Authenticity requires questioning. When they stay quiet, they feel empty. When they speak up, they feel isolated. So many questioners choose solitude, not because they dislike people, but because pretending hurts more. People who question everything struggle with identity, because identity itself becomes a question. They don't easily accept labels. They don't lock themselves into one role. Instead, they stay open. This makes them natural creators. They don't just consume ideas. They build frameworks. They write. They design. They teach. They create meaning where confusion exists. Creation becomes a way to survive their curiosity. Questioners value solitude, not as escape, but as alignment. In solitude, they don't need to perform. They don't need to simplify. They don't need to agree. It's the only place their mind can fully stretch. Silence becomes their language, and when they finally speak, their words carry weight. Questioners rarely seek attention, but they influence quietly. One well-placed question can change a decision, expose a flaw, prevent a mistake. They are often overlooked because they don't shout. Society rewards confidence and speed. Questioners value accuracy and depth. Their influence is invisible, but essential. Authority depends on acceptance without resistance. Questioners struggle with this, not because they're rebellious, but because authority rarely explains why. They aren't defiant, they're allergic to nonsense. They respect logic, not titles. Every questioner reaches a crossroads. They can question endlessly and stay stuck, or question strategically and build. The shift happens when they stop asking, "Why is everything flawed?" and start asking, "What can I improve?" This is when questioning becomes a tool, not a trap. The goal isn't to stop questioning. That would be violence to who they are. The goal is direction. Healthy questioners learn, not every question needs an answer. Not every truth needs immediate action. Uncertainty doesn't mean failure. Wisdom isn't knowing everything. It's knowing what matters. If you question everything, you're not broken, you're not difficult, you're not alone. You simply have a mind that refuses to sleepwalk through reality. The world may not always reward depth immediately, but it depends on it completely. Because every system that improved, every truth that survived, started with someone brave enough to ask,
Why?